somebody who has the wilayat. And what is wilayat? Wilayat literally means power or authority or a right given to someone over someone else. But when we look at Islamic theology, especially the Shi'i theology, wilayat basically has 4 dimensions, 4 different levels, 4 different dimensions of this concept of wilayat. Number 1, it is the right of love. Number 2, it is the authority in spiritual guidance. Number 3, it is the authority in socio-political leadership. And number 4, it is the authority over the entire universe. Let us go through it very quick here. The first one. The first dimension of wilayat is the dimension of the right of love. Wilayah of hub. What it means is that Ali and Ali, they have this wilayah of hub. Means they have this right on the Muslims that Muslims should love them. I don't want to spend much time on this issue because this is one of the unanimous beliefs of all the Muslims around the world. From the Shias in one extreme to the Wahhabis and even extremists among them will never deny that the love for the family of the Prophet is part of our deen. Because this concept of loving the Ahlulbayt is known as part of the zaruriyat ad-deen. Zaruriyat means the essential parts of the deen. If you deny that, you actually are outside the fold of Islam. So nobody can say, I hate Ali Muhammad and I'm a Muslim. And therefore you will see in our fiqh, a Nasibi or a Khariji is considered to be a kafir. Because hatred towards Ahlul Bayt is equal to kufr. And this is something very well accepted by all the Muslims, based on this ayat of Quran in Surah Shura, Surah number 42, ayat 23, which is known as Ayatul Mawadda, where Allah commands the Prophet to ask the Muslims, to love his family. And this is actually reflected in this command that all Muslims obey every year, every day, in their namaz, when they recite the salawat. And it is not only on Muhammad, it is Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Salawat padhne ek baar. So this first dimension of wilayat, which is the wilayat of love, where Ali and Ali have a right on the Muslims that they should love them, there is no dispute about it. Just one hadith here from the Sunni sources, Imam Nasa'i and others have quoted this from Amir al-Mu'minin himself, where he says, وَالَّذِي فَلَقَ الْحَبَّ وَبَرَعَ النَّسْمَ. In the name of the one who split the grain and created the soul, إِنَّهُ لَعَهْدِ النَّبِي. It is actually the promise that the Prophet has given to me. إِنَّهُ لَا يُحِبُّنِي إِلَّا مُؤْمِنٌ وَلَا يُبْغِضُنِي إِلَّا مُنَافِقٌ. Ali says that the Prophet has told me that none shall love you but a mu'min, and none shall hate you but a munafiq. And this is where people like Jabir bin Abdullah Ansari, a very prominent Sahabi, Abu Sa'id Khudari, these are all from Sunni sources, where they used to say, مَا كُنَّا نَعْرِفُ الْمُنَافِقِينَ إِلَّا بِبُغْضِهِمْ عَلِيًّا. We were not able to identify the munafiqeen except when we saw they had hatred towards Ali. So Ali becomes the sign of Iman or Nifaq. Those who love him are mu'min, those who hate him are munafiq. Salawat padhne ek baar. The second dimension of the 4 dimensions of the wilayat of Ali and Ali is the wilayah of imamat, the spiritual guidance. On this issue also, the Shias and Sufis are all together. That when it comes to spiritual guidance, if we want to attain higher levels of spirituality, we don't really have to go here and there. I'm really surprised when we hear about some of the young people from the Shias, who when they become religious, they want to develop themselves more spiritually. Then they start going into literature of the Sufis. What they do not realize, that all the Sufi silsilas and the orders of Sufism, all of them except one known as Naqshbandi, trace the chain of masters and disciples going backwards all to the Imams of the Ahlulbayt and eventually to Waliyul Awliya Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. The Naqshbandi Sufi order traces its line of spiritual masters to our sixth Imam. And from the sixth Imam, then they go to his mother's side, where they end up with Abu Bakr, through Muhammad bin Abi Bakr. But that connection is actually not valid. Because if you go to Muhammad bin Abi Bakr, Muhammad bin Abi Bakr was very, very young when his father died. Ali married his mother, Asma bint Umays. Muhammad bin Abu Bakr was biologically son of Abu Bakr. But spiritually he was disciple of Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. So even the Naqshbandi who had gone to the sixth Imam and then gone through his mother line to Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, they should actually go back from Muhammad bin Abu Bakr, not to his biological father, but to his spiritual father, Ali bin Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. But these two dimensions of wilayat are, in a way, first one is universally accepted by all, second is by Shias and Sufis. It's only in the third and the fourth that we have problems with others. If you look at the chart there on the screen, you will see there are four dimensions there when it comes to the Wilayah of law. The Sunnis and the Sufis and the Shias are all on the same page there. On the second one, when we talk about the spiritual guidance, this is where you see the Sufis and Shias are together. But when we come to the third and the fourth, where we talk about the Wilayat of Ahlulbayt as socio-political leadership, and the fourth one as the authority over the entire universe, this is where you see we are alone. Because this is a unique dimension of Shia theology. When it comes to the third one, socio-political leadership of the Ahlul Bayt, we know about it quite a lot. We study about it, we hear about it. This is the issue of Imamat and Khilafat. But I would like to go to the fourth one, which is not discussed that much, and it is not easy to digest this concept of universal wilayat of the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt. Salawat Akbar. What do I mean by universal authority? In the Shi'i theology, we have a belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted the Prophet of Islam and the Ahlul Bayt the authority which makes it possible for the wali to exercise his power over everything which exists in the universe. When we talk about it, sometimes, I hear the words, oh, this is all Indo-Pakistani ideas. Maybe, remnant of Hindu influence there. Well, I don't want to talk about any Indian scholar. Let me just quote to you two prominent scholars of this century from the Shia world. One is the late Ayatollah Imam Khomeini. When he talks about this concept of the Wilayah of the universal type, and this is a quotation I have in my book, let me just read this here. When he talks about it, that it is a vicegerency pertaining to the whole of creation, by virtue of which all the atoms in the universe humble themselves before the holder of authority. Look at his expression. He says all the atoms in the universe are there, humble, waiting for his command. It is one of the essential beliefs of our Shia school that no one can attain the spiritual status of the Imam, not even the closest of the angels or other prophets before Prophet Muhammad. In fact, according to the traditions that have been handed down to us, this is Imam Khomeini talking, the most noble messenger and the Imams existed before the creation of the world in the form of lights situated beneath the arsh and the divine throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were superior to other men, even in the sperm from which they grew, and in their physical composition. And he says, this is indicated by what Jibreel said in the story of Mi'raj, that a point came where even Jibreel could not go further. And he left Rasulullah to go ahead alone. And that is where he says, and he quotes the hadith, that Jibreel told Rasulullah, were I to draw closer by as much as the breadth of a finger, surely I would burn. So this is one prominent scholar of the Shia world of this century, saying that all the atoms of the universe humble themselves, before the holder of the wilayat and the authority. Going to late Ayatollah Khomeini. This is another scholar of the same status, where he talks about this different kinds of wilayat, and when it comes to the universal wilayat, he says, as for the first type of wilayat, referring to the universal one, obviously there is no doubt in their authority over the entire creation, as is clear from the ahadith. Why? Because they, the Prophet and the Ahlulbayt, are the link in creation. Through them continues the existence. They are reason for creation of the universe. If it had not been for them, Allah would not have created the people altogether. The people have been created for them. Through them the people exist, and they are the means of the pouring of forth of the divine grace. Salawat padhna ek baar. Baroda salawat padhna. Look at the words of Ayatollah Khomeini continuing, where he says, actually they have the universal authority just below that of the Creator himself. Don't say we are exaggerating. This is not ghulu. This is Sayyid al-Khomeini, one of the greatest marja of this century, saying that they have the universal authority just below that of the Creator himself. This authority of theirs is like the authority of Almighty Allah on the creation. However, it is weaker compared to the authority of Almighty Allah on the creation. Salawat padhna ek baar. When we talk about this concept, it's not easy to understand. It's not even easy to absorb. They will say, oh, so you are putting the Prophet and the Ahlulbayt on the same level of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Isn't this shirk? No. If you remember the wordings of Ayatul Akhui, their authority is weaker compared to the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not only that, the Wilayah Takwiniya given to the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt is totally dependent on the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not that Allah has retired. That's the ghuluv side of the issue. He's still in absolute control. If He wants, He can take that power away. So He is in control, but He, out of His own wisdom, has chosen them and He said, I have given you this power. The difference is that the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is essentially His, cannot be separated from Him. Whereas the power given to the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is not essentially theirs, it is a gift from Almighty Allah. Salawat padhne ek baar aur. Let us go to the Quran. To give you this idea, what are we talking about? There's two ways of looking at things. And I use this example many times. There is a vertical way and there is a horizontal way of looking at things. If you look at things from the horizontal level, then there's a problem. But if you look at things from the vertical form, then there is no problem at all. Let us look at one example. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and let me give you the ayat first before we go to the chart. When it comes to death, life and death is in the hands of whom? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In Quran, He says, in more than one place, He says, Allahu yatawaffa al-anfus hina mawtiha. He is the one who gives death at the time of death. He is the one who takes the soul at the time of death. But there is another ayat, Surah 32, ayat 11, where He says, Qul, O Muhammad, say to the people, Yatawaffakum malakul maut. Your maut happens at the hand of malakul maut, the angel of death. So is it Allah who gives death, or is it malakul maut who gives death? Same words have been used in the Quran. Yatawaffa. Allahu yatawaffa al-anfus. Yatawaffakum malakul maut. And this is where we see you can bring Allah and malakul maut. If you put Allah and the angel of death horizontally on the same line, that malakul maut is doing this independent of the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that's shirk. That is absolutely shirk, and you are out of the fold of Islam. But if you look at the things from the vertical form, Allah is the supreme there. But He has His agents. Malakul Maut is down there, giving death according to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. According to the power given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is where you say this is Tawheed. And so it's how you look at things. And so when we talk about, the issue of the Wilayah, the Takwini of the Prophet and Ali and Ali, we have to realize, if you put them on the same line, that is shirk. If you put them in a vertical form with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the source and a continuous source of that authority and power to Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, then this is Tawheed and nothing else. Salawat padhne ek baar.